We're live. Good morning, Senate Judiciary Committee. We're meeting once again remotely, and our subject this morning is mainly budget requests from criminal justice and juvenile justice agencies in light of a second budget adjustment and CARES Act funding, which the judiciary presented last week. And this is the others, and that's why the judiciary is not here this morning on their CARES Act, because they've already presented it. And it is part of the House bill. The only thing that the House passed was the judiciary portions of the CARES Act and Budget Adjustment Act. So I expect that we're going to first hear from Matt Valerio, the Defender General. I believe that everybody's got information that the various departments and agencies submitted. So, and it's on our committee website, I hope. So go ahead, Matt, if you would like. You're muted, Matt.
All right.
Thank you.
Had to grab my mouse. As you do, I have two screens going here.
Yep,
One,
right.
So this is obviously a unique situation for us, and for given, first of all, that I've never done budget adjustment before for any purpose, but we're in a unique situation, and basically what I am asking for in budget adjustment and allocation of the CARES money is a response to what the judiciary has done in attempting to create a safer, more remote access to the court system, and also in response to what I anticipate being a wave of cases, some old that have been in the system and have been deferred for these period of months, some that have been that the arraignments have been deferred, so they are new cases to the system, but they've been hanging out there for the last period of months. And then for the regular, quote unquote, new cases that would be coming in during this same time period. So we anticipate that we actually will have a significant increase in workload during the next, I think, year to 18 months as they work their way through the system. In the old days, they used to talk about the pig and the python. As cases move their way through the system when there was a backlog, and we're getting ready to eat the pig right now. And the more we can do to try to expedite and process and move those cases through the system appropriately, the better. So you will see in the submission that I think everybody has available to them. We sent it. You do have that, right?
Yes.
Okay. It is requests for upgraded laptops, upgraded computer setups and the like, because apparently to deal with the system that the courts want to use, you can't be dealing with anything that has a laptop or computer that's more than 5 years old. So we are, we replace things as necessary, basically when they break. So we have a lot of these in the system that need to be in the staff system, the staff public defense system, that need to be replaced to be able to accommodate what the court wants to do. But the other unique thing about our system is about half the system is contractors. And those are conflict contractors and primary public defense contractors. and how, usually we don't deal with equipment with them, but we can't kind of impose on them a cost, and then just kind of leave them hanging out there. And so I spoke to Stephanie Barrett with Laura Evans the other day. We all spoke, and it was deemed appropriate that we talk about giving the contractors an IT stipend to allow them to upgrade their equipment. So it would basically be a one-time $2,000 payment to each contractor to allow them to have one laptop and peripherals available so that they could interact with the court on behalf of the Defender General's office in their role, either as a staff contractor and a public or a conflict contractor. As with any of these IT upgrades and dealing with WebEx and the like, there's some training and upfit and installation. And we did put in a position for a limited service tech position who would aid our two current IT people in making sure everybody's up to speed and that their stuff works. The other thing that we had to address is the issue of just the caseload itself, and what has worked for us in the past, because we never know exactly where the caseload is going to spike or increase, is if we contract for what we call caseload relief contractors, both in the public defense system and in the conflict system. And those are people who would be deployed around the state with no particular county, as their base, but we would deploy them regionally and then allow them to pick up cases as they filtered through the conflict system, and in counties where the attorneys there would be overwhelmed. Now, some of the counties that I'm concerned about are like Lamoille County and Addison County, and right now Franklin County for different reasons. But in Lamoille and in Addison, we only have one attorney in the staff office. So if a wave of cases comes in and their lawyer equivalent caseload count, I don't want to get into all that, but if that goes from a 1.0 to a 1.7, then even if for a temporary amount of time, it's going to just prevent them really from getting any work done at all. So we are looking at that as a way to deal with caseload in both the conflict and the public defense system. The good thing about these contracts is when the emergency is over, whenever that is, 18 months, 2 years, 1 year, whatever it might be, at the end of that fiscal year, the contracts can go away. One of the other things we talked about is what do we do in dealing with clients safely? And the thing we talked about is designating safe spaces for clients and attorneys to meet, where there would be a room that would be designated separate and apart from the regular workspace, and we can upfit those rooms in a way that allows contact via video. So if we're having a court hearing, the client and the attorney can appear in court via video, via the WebEx, rather than having clients in court and attorneys in offices, or attorneys and clients in the same office. And it's not really that much to do, but it adds up when you do it over 13 offices. And that's the upfit of like wall panels and plexiglass barriers and that sort of thing. We put in some requests for personal protection equipment, basically masks and cleaning and the like. But I'll tell you that I said this in the in kind of the additional comment section of my memo. What we're doing here assumes that our current system is intact. And right now, our current system is not intact. Since the beginning of this, the emergency orders and the declaration of emergency, I've had 4 attorneys who left or are leaving. And so right now I've got one who's going to be leaving from Rutland. I have one who retired, and then I had to transfer somebody, and it created a opening in another spot, which we'd been attempting to fill, but we haven't been able to for 10 months now. Actually, we weren't able to fill it even before the crisis. I just got notice that another one of our lawyers is leaving in the next couple of weeks. And I've had other staff members also leave. So right now I'm basically down 4 lawyers from where I would want to be. And I am down support staff members in central office. Now there's a hiring freeze right now, so I'm not allowed to fill any openings. And I've requested, once I requested that we able to bypass the hiring freeze. And I basically got a letter, not basically, I got a letter back that said, forget it. We're not allowing you to, do that. So right now I'm down 4 personnel. I have another position that is open that we were going to hire down in Bennington because of the juvenile caseload down there, even if none of this was happening. And then on top of that, we're going to get this wave of cases coming in. I know we're not like high on the list of probably administration priorities at this point regarding, they got a lot to deal with, and we're probably not first on the list. But we are a constitutionally required service. We've got to be able to do the job, and we've got to be able to do it safely. I think clearly there's an opportunity with the CARES money here to fill some holes temporarily, and then it's kind of hope for the best. But I think I have to be able to start at a even level where I actually have people filling the spots as though nothing had happened. And that leads me to my final and biggest concern that I keep talking about, and I have for years, and it's becoming very acute. Even if I get the money to do this, I'm not sure if I can hire people. I just don't know if I can, because my experience before the crisis is that I have difficulty hiring people. And actually, in some spots, it's almost impossible to hire people. And so, we're very concerned about, what we're going to see in the next period of months. You want to ask for everybody, excuse me, to have some patience with how this all rolls out. And I can see it being a problem coming up. But I think everybody, courts, clients, corrections, prosecutors, defenders, all of us have to understand that this is uncharted territory, and we'll all try to do the best we can, but this isn't going to be easy. One of the biggest issues we have right now too, we talk about hiring. They aren't doing bar exams this summer. So to the extent that we would even be able to hire new people right out of law school, which, by the way, isn't what we need right now. We need people to be able to jump in and actually do the work immediately. But if we were going to be hiring people out of law school, they aren't doing bar exams. New York canceled their exam. Vermont's not doing theirs. We don't get anybody from Vermont anyway. But basically, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, those are the ones where we tend to get people out of, and they aren't having exams. That's thousands and thousands of potential lawyers who aren't even in the mix anymore. All of our clerks for the summer which is another place we might get one or two out of potentially. That's not happening. Hiring is not going to be easy under any circumstances. I see Senator White is.
Senator White has a question. Go ahead, Senator White.
So your last comment about the bar exams, we have allowed people to practice in other fields because other exams have been canceled and aren't taking place, like nursing exams and a number of other EMS people, some law enforcement. Could we not do the same thing? I mean, it wouldn't help completely, but could we not do the same thing for lawyers if they're finished with law school? I mean, you can't assume that they're going to pass the bar, but we've done it for other professions.
Yeah, in Vermont, about 50% of the people who take the bar pass it. So you're doing a coin flip doing that. The other thing is I think you can do it to some degree, but usually what ends up happening is those are the ones who can go into law firms and work doing, real estate and that kind of thing under the supervision of another attorney. And there is a practice rule that allows that, a student practice rule. But I really would be very uneasy about having somebody with no experience and who hasn't passed a bar exam doing constitutionally required work. I mean, you can do it. You can say yes, but if somebody's liberty interest is at stake, I don't want to turn it over to somebody who's never stepped in a courtroom.
That's true. And with all deference to Professor Baruth sitting there, exams are probably oftentimes the worst way to tell whether somebody is qualified or not. But anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, we had a guy who we had offered a job from Colorado. This is years ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. He came in working in prior to his licensing, he was working under the student practice, or I think he was admitted in some other state, but he was working pro hac vice in Chittenden County. And by all accounts, he did a great job, was excellent. When they did the background check on him, he was like a complete fraud, had never finished law school, he did actually have a license from California, but he had fraudulently obtained that license as well. So he was like one of those doctors who, has been doing operations for 20 years and everybody loved him, and they found out that he never graduated medical school.
See what I said?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're right.
Professor?
Exams aren't but I'd rather not go that route.
I used to work with a guy who had that exact same thing, and he had graduated from Windsor Prison, so that's how long ago this is. But conned everybody into believing that he was a professor and was able to become the head librarian at the prison and walk around and leave the facility and go back and forth. And he also convinced people that he was a yacht salesman, and several other jobs over the years. Very interesting character. Matt, one of the things, and I think this would be true of the entire criminal justice system, is that we do expect a surge, and we do expect, we've been lucky in a way that we've reduced our prison population by about 18%, as I calculate it. And a good number of those are people who were on detention, who are no longer incarcerated, and people who might have been placed in jail who were not placed in jail because of the pandemic. And I think many of us are concerned that if you cut your criminal justice budget and you don't have the ability to deal with this surge, that these folks will end up right back in jail. And so you're maybe saving money over here in one pot, and I'm moving my hands around to another pot where you're going to be spending it on corrections. So if we could look at the 300 odd folks who have not either been released or not incarcerated, our detention numbers are down as low as they've been in decades, and our prison population's down by about 150. So I just am worried. This would almost be an opportunity to take most people out of Mississippi. And I'm worried that we're just going to surge our way back into incarcerating people because the system is decimated and not able to respond. And so I think that your budget request, that of the, obviously the state's attorneys are important players too, but your budget request and that of the diversion and other alternatives is extremely important here.
And I think also in light of, we were presented with this skinny budget, which is a de facto 8% first quarter cut. And it's not, that does not seem to recognize that there's a surge coming. It's almost like here comes the tidal wave, let's run to the ocean. I know what it was done. It was done to try to fairly distribute it across, the entirety of government without, regard to any particular favor or necessity. But, we've, as you said, there is a surge coming, and I don't know how we weather a surge without the people to do the work, the ability to hire, and an 8% cut.
I think there's two things that we're going to be looking at. One would be, can we use the COVID money to replace certain lost revenues? And we're looking at guidance from Congress, but also, is it possible that Congress will be able to get its act together and pass a bill the president would sign that would help the cities and towns and states? And I think that without that, looking at I don't like the term skinny budget, as Stephanie knows, but I think that it indicates there was fat there before to some people. And I realize that the term skinny came from the idea that there was fewer pages.
Well, for us, skinny means this. We had one administrative support person in the juvenile defender's office that covered the entire state. That person left, and we asked to replace that one person who did the scheduling for juvenile work and did all of the support for the attorneys in that division for the entire state, and we were denied. So we have nobody. Right. So that's how skinny we are, that we went from 1 to 0. As you know, we run pretty close to the bone all the time. One of the good things about, I think, the structure of our proposal with the contracts is that we can contract for the money to be spent prior to the 31st of the year. Unlike, an employee who would be getting, payments over a longer period of time. We have done these before. I've done them with like big cases where you say, look, I'll give you 10 grand if you handle this extra work beyond your contract. We'll pay you in a lump sum. But we are able to structure our contracts to do that, to be able to comply with the payment requirements of the Act.
Okay. Other questions from Matt? Matt, thanks much. We'll carry this over to the Appropriations Committee, and I don't hear any objection. And I have your two most important things is budget needs to recognize a surge coming, and we need to have the hiring freeze lifted.
Yeah, in general, yes. And then you see all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before we move on, I just wanted to amplify Matt's point. When Adam Gresham was talking about the 8% across the board, he said, this is the most policy light proposal I've ever put forward. And I think he meant that in a positive way, that it was just mathematical and it wasn't,
Right.
Making assumptions or putting any policy recommendations before the legislature. But as Matt's pointing out, if you're putting a policy light 8% across the board cut out there, you're, explicitly not taking into account things like the surge. So, I think we should very strongly, in terms of the justice system and the Defender General and all the other parts, we should be pushing that forward in appropriations, because 8% across the board, I've never liked across the board cuts. It's a lazy way to do business, I think.
Yep. I don't disagree. And I think just in general, I've always been discouraged when governors, and they particularly do propose these across the board cuts. My history with them goes back to Howard Dean, and each governor seems to think that's the easiest way to get out of this problem. And yet it just creates a myriad of other problems because you don't make the tough decisions about what is it government should be doing. And as we decimate government, then we're surprised when our constituents can't get services from government. Senator White.
Yeah, I agree with that last point about the across the board, but it is the easiest thing for the governors to do.
Yeah.
But whatever really important thing that I was going to say just went the way of all important good ideas.
I thought it was because my earbud fell out when I was looking at Marley licking his paws. I was about
I'm
to
sure
yell
it will,
at Marley.
I know what it was. We might want to, the hiring freeze. I think that there are some positions that you simply cannot say we can't hire. And one of them from our committee is the Police Academy Executive Director. They have none. And so we're going to, I think, appeal to try and see if we can't get that freeze lifted. And I don't know if Matt, if there are very particular ones, not lifting the whole freeze, but if there are very particular positions that are so essential that by putting a hiring freeze on, it's having a huge impact.
I totally agree. Let me just respond to that though quickly. The part of the problem here is the judiciary doesn't have a hiring freeze. So they can bring in all those former judges and without, a hiring freeze, they can bring in temporary employees and so forth. So that's what creates even more of a surge is they've got the judges, but Matt doesn't have the lawyers and Campbell doesn't have the attorneys to to prosecute, and Matt doesn't have the defenders or the schedulers and all that. So it's a double whammy because another branch of government has plenty. So, anyhow, thank you, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
We'll move on to our state's attorneys, who I believe have submitted a new product, and I'm not sure that new product is in our package yet. Peggy, can you make sure that whatever changes they made are in the stuff that's in front of the committee?
I got something new this morning from Pepper and I posted that. Is that what you're talking about? Or is there
I
something
think
else?
so, yeah.
Yeah,
Memo from state's attorney, re-COVID-19.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And just so you know, it's the same thing. The other one that was sent, there must have been a formatting problem. So I
Okay.
think you all were receiving it on 6 pages. So this was trying to put it all together.
Okay, I think we have both of them. So we should ignore the 6-pager. Is that correct?
Yes, if you just go with what Peggy just sent out.
Okay. Thank you.
So John Campbell, Executive Director for the State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. Again, thank you for having us here to talk about it. First of all, I can't help but echo what Matt said about the overall situation that we find ourselves in the criminal justice system. There are, as he is also under the pay freeze or the hiring freeze, we are also. And as I mentioned last week, we're, from an attorney standpoint, we're 6 folks down. We're also down on staff people, and which is creating and going to create a massive problem once we start rolling things out again. But one thing that I'd like to address real quick is that, I think most people believe that the prosecutors are there just to put people in jail, to convict them of a crime. And because of what the legislature has done, I think very creatively over the past decade, in trying to find alternatives to justice, alternative justice for folks. We've been doing a lot of work in trying to prevent people from going in and into jail and being incarcerated. And I think that these programs are extremely important, and with all the folks that are involved in getting them to work. And clearly one of the, there's 2 main folks or main groups that are involved, and that's us and also the defense bar, and making sure that we have people that when they are charged with things, if we find that there are other reasons or something other, there's an impetus behind their criminal behavior, we look to see if there's ways to have them, let's say if it's drug use, to get some treatment, or alcohol use to get treatment. And I think that these things have been very effective. I think they could have been far more effective if there was more time for the prosecutors and also defense bar, but I'll just speak to the prosecutors for a second. But that if the prosecutors had more time to spend looking at the cases and really looking into the backgrounds of some of the people. But because when you're handling 300 to 400 caseloads, you have to just continually just churn, and you're trying to divert things, but quite honestly, you haven't had the sufficient time to look back and to make sure that all the key parts are in place to ensure that this person will not be, will have an opportunity to change his or her behavior and not be find themselves back in the system. So this is one of the issues that really concerns me now going into the surge, because in addition to the regular caseloads that we have, as Matt pointed out, most of the new charges have all been put on hold, and the arraignments really won't start until mid-June onward. So we're going to be faced with really tough times. And what you've asked here in this COVID budget, I think we're fortunate that we have some funds available to do what we're doing, and that is really reacting to the court and how they want to go forward in this post-COVID time period. And of course, that is mostly dealing with IT issues. So we've done our best to try to go through this. We've met with ADS to determine what kind of IT needs we would have, what concerns are out there. There were concerns that I didn't even realize, as Matt pointed out before about the laptops. I didn't know that there was an age out of laptops, and it turns out that there is, and mostly because of security issues. So there are things that we're finding out every day that leads me to believe that even though we're going to try to put together a plan and put forward requests now, I think we're going to have to look at this as being fluid in a way, because there are going to be many changes that we are not anticipating. And so I think that I'm hoping that we will be able to work closely with the defense bar and also the courts to ensure this transition goes forward. And with that being said, let me just go into some of the areas that we find are necessary. And I see it in three, that we have three major challenges. One is to retrofit the IT infrastructure to be able to allow the offices to handle cases remotely. And one issue that I just said, it's not just the offices per se, which presents its own problems, because we have to not only retrofit those offices to be able to keep our staff members close, because they're all small offices and people are all within close proximity to one another. But we also have to be able to use the conference rooms as a courtroom, if you will, that a remote courtroom. So we have to have the technology put in there, and to make sure that we're able to do it and do it functionally. So that's the one issue. The second one is having sufficient workforce to handle the backlog. And this comes in two forms. One is the attorneys, of course, that have to appear in court. And I'm going to be repeating Matt quite a bit, I'm sure, here, but as he pointed out, while it would be nice to be able to use some recent graduates, you can't, you can throw them in, but this wouldn't just be a baptize them under fire. This is basically being thrown into the netherworld of not knowing exactly where, what exactly is going on with the courts, what's going on with the individual cases, how you're going to present evidence. And I think it would be extremely difficult. So we had a long discussion, in fact, lasting over several days, about is it best to look and to try to get additional attorneys for each office, or do we try to increase the staff? Because we find quite often that if you have an office that has some really good attorneys in it, very experienced attorneys, if you put some staff folks in there that really know what they're doing or are capable, they're just as valuable, I think, as having an attorney, especially, let's say, a first-year attorney in there. So what we've done is we've broken down the request regarding temps to include the people we would need for IT support, because each one of the offices, again, are going to have to use this the CBX or whatever it is system that the court has put together, the WebEx. And as Peggy could probably tell you that how many different hats she's had to wear now since this has all started, with trying to figure out how to get some of the documents up on the screen, and making sure that everybody's IT works properly, what to do if it doesn't, if it fails. Because and again, it's a court process is extremely important, in that there are constitutional rights of individuals that are being are at stake. And so everything has to be done according to the law, according to the rules of evidence, according to the rules of procedure. It has to be done properly. The third part is, and this is a big part also, because this is really an IT issue. We've got to make sure that our data that we have going back and forth, number one, is very secure, but also we have to make sure that it's integrated with the court system. One of the problems that we have been dealing with and facing now, and it's going to be it's exacerbated by the COVID issue. And also, actually, Matt's office is going to be faced with the same thing because we use the same case management software, which we have learned that through ADS and also our own IT person, that the company that made our case management is going at. We don't know if they're going to go out of business totally, but they're stopping. As of the first of the year, they will no longer be providing any type of security patches for the case management program, which ADS has pointed out that that's just not acceptable. We can't do that. We can't put them on, have that in the state system. And this creates even more problem when we're talking about having to interact with the judiciary through their new system. If we don't have a safe system, it's just not going to work. And it is clearly a problem now that is, as I said, exacerbated by COVID. And I feel that and ADS agrees that this is an issue that is clearly related, but it will also, and maybe it's fortuitous that it's happening at this time, but it will also help and deal with a situation that has to be done one way or the other. And that's making that transition. So if I could, I'll go now, throw my glasses on and go down through this other page here, if you could see that, which has got the numbers. And I'll be quite honest, when it came down to trying to figure out what number
I'm
to put
sorry,
in-
John, I was muted. This is the budget page, the page
Yeah.
with, it says you're asking for 1.9,818,000.
Right, we broke it down to the FY20, which
Right.
is 818.
No, this is good.
Okay.
Could we have that put on the screen, please?
I don't know if Peggy knows how to do that.
Oh,
That's why you need an IT.
Peggy,
That's why you
is there a
need,
possibility of you putting that on the screen
Yep.
page, please?
Peggy
Yeah,
knows how to
alright.
do that.
Of
While we're
course.
waiting for Peggy to put on the screen, John, I wanted to mention to you and Matt as well that I didn't see any money for travel. My understanding is that many of the courts, Bennington included, may not be able to handle jury trials, which would force your state's attorneys and defenders, well, maybe not defenders, but to travel to other counties to have jury trials held. So that's another consideration you may want to add between now and the time we take it up in the Appropriations Committee. So I'm not sure which courts are not going to be able to handle jury trials.
And that's something that we're just finding out now. So,
Well, I mean, I didn't know about it till I read about it in the Bennington Banner, but
yeah,
that's where all my news comes from, by the way.
I just heard about it yesterday. So,
Yeah, and that is one more case where, and I understand that the safety and the health of individuals and jurors and et cetera is extremely important. But if Bennington County can't hold a jury trial and they have to go to Brattleboro or Rutland or wherever, that means state's attorneys, defense attorneys, et cetera, are going to need to travel.
right. So, and I apologize for the small type here, but that's, hold on one second, please.
That better?
Great for us, I think. I mean,
Yeah, that's fine.
fine for me. I don't know.
Anyway, I just received, Annie was just letting me know to remind you also the fact that the 8% across the board, which, obviously that is a major concern, but I think
Yeah.
I think you all get that.
I think we all know that.
Yeah. So basically the first one, this conference room reconfigs, as I mentioned, we're putting dollars in here, figuring, how much it would cost, and this estimate may be high, may be low. I think it's it's probably close to the number. I think it's probably going to be low because it doesn't, what this doesn't figure into, and we have to adjust this as well, is that this takes into consideration the conference rooms, but not the actual individual offices. And I just read something yesterday online that the new recommendations out of CDC and then a couple of other medical groups that about office settings, and they're talking about making sure that people aren't across from each other. They're expanding the 6-foot zone with certain individuals and certain businesses that have to speak to the public or speak loudly because the droplets would have a tendency to go further than, I guess, the original projections. So I think that's going to be a little light, but that's what the first one's for. The second one, the 375, as you know, that's the Cisco endpoints where the court's putting theirs in. I think theirs is for like $1 million. We talked with ADS and they believe that those endpoints could be done for 375. The cost for the telephones, the remote court hearings, because a lot of our people still may not be able to go into the offices. And that is, we didn't put any money in for this first time expense, but for the FY21, the 17,000 represents the a payment to not just to purchase, but to have the service that was provided by our RT folks. The interface with the laptops, we discussed that, the fact of you have to have secure laptops. So a lot of ours, as with Matt's, with our budgets and his budget over the last few years, it's been very tight. So we have not been able to increase as much as we'd like. So that's the for that.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, John. I'm just looking at under the reconfiguration of the conference rooms, you say some of the work may be split between now and the first months of FY21. I thought that the work had to be complete by December to qualify for COVID money. Is that not true?
FY is starts July 1.
Oh, I see. So we're talking about,
Yeah,
You're correct, Senator Baruth. It has to be spent by December 31st.
okay. So you mean July, August, September, something like that?
yes.
Okay.
So the first column is what we what we believe we could spend now between now and July 1st. And then this second phase would be the after July 1st.
Okay, great, thank you.
But you do have items in your column. The third column is FY21, 1/1 to 6/30. So that would be it. I don't think the COVID funds would be available then, but Stephanie can check that out.
Right. And I think what we're doing is we're just putting this out here and hoping that the feds will, see the light and understand that they really have an obligation to help the states out. And if so, we just wanted to let you know that it would be a continuation. We didn't want to just lump it into the put it beforehand, because I said to our folks, I don't want to put anything down here that we don't really think we can get out the door before within the required time period. So we did that.
We're running
Late.
behind.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So the big issue is also we have, as I said, the case management, which I explained to you, is absolutely exacerbated by the COVID issue. And I think it absolutely could be covered under these funds. And regardless, it is going to be needed to be done. If we can get it under the COVID funds, which I absolutely believe the case can be made, then I think this is the best place for it. And then we're trying to do the contract workers. Also, I'll just go down to the attorney contractors. That's coming in at a step one, which is basically $26 an hour. And frankly, I have no clue how we're going to find somebody to come in and pay attorneys $26 an hour to come in. But that's what our first step is. And so we're being very, very conservative there. And the other permanent or not permanent, but the non-permanent positions are those people I mentioned that will not only be, it'll be a hybrid positions of basically the tech stuff, tech support, also the staffing. This will prevent us from having to ask for more attorneys because I believe my feeling is that if we have a really good staff person, they can do a lot of work that the attorneys are doing currently that is not does not really require legal knowledge. So that's what we're putting forward. And I again, I really appreciate the fact that you guys realize and recognize the damage that's being done to the criminal justice system. And if we don't get this right, if we don't get it up and put resources into it, then those people where we have made those steps and dealing with or getting people out of jail or reducing the detainees, if we can't get the whole system back up and running and making sure that we have some backstops for these folks, it's just going to start again. And so thank you very much. And I will
Thank
be
you, John.
available for questions.
Any questions for John? I think it's very clear, John. You once again make the same point as Matt, that if we fund the judiciary's proposals, then we need to fund the rest of the system, or there would be a real problem. And I appreciate your testimony.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
See you in the probes.
Okay.
Next is the Office of Attorney General. I think we'll first take up the request on diversion. Are you going to handle that too, Josh?
Yes, Senator Sears.
Okay, so why don't we do the diversion document first, which is a one-pager, and then we've got about a 4-page report on the Office of the Attorney General.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah,
Senator
4
Sears.
pages. Yeah, get that. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Sears, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Joshua Diamond, Deputy Attorney General, on behalf of the Attorney General's Office. Let me start with our Community Justice Division or unit, which handles diversion and pretrial services. As outlined in our letter, we anticipate a loss of fees, which represents about 25% of the operating budget for court diversion and pretrial services. Those estimates show about a $23,000 loss in this fiscal year, and then $143,000 loss in fiscal 21. There is still a demand for services within these divisions, if you will, with court diversion and pretrial services. And we expect that the needs of these services will also increase once the courts open up. So we wanted to alert the committee of this funding shortfall that we anticipate within our Community Justice Division. Are there any questions?
No. Are there any questions? It's pretty clear.
So with regards to the rest of the office, we have seen a substantial increase in the demand for legal services from the Attorney General's office arising from COVID-19. And we've, in most part, been able to meet that demand. And I want to just commend the Assistant Attorneys General and the support staff who have really stepped up to do the extra work, to take on the extra load, and in often very difficult circumstances. We've been working remotely since early March. And for many, especially those who have young children or school-age children who have been engaged in becoming teachers, as well as parents and assistant attorneys general, they've been balancing that by working flexible hours, often late into the evening as demands have required them to do so. So let me just dive a little bit into the details to talk about those demands and how we've met them. But I think what you'll find at the end is similar to the discussion by the Defender General and the state's attorneys, and maybe somewhat different. While we are able to meet those demands currently, and we anticipate being able to do so going forward, an 8% across the board cut will make that quite a challenge for us going forward. But let me get into the details. We have established a rapid response team to deal with enforcement issues related to the governor's executive orders. We've pulled attorneys from 3 different divisions to staff this rapid response team. And we've spent a significant amount of time and resources answering questions from the public, business owners, law enforcement, and others to educate them as needed to achieve compliance with the executive orders, which have been so important to achieving the public health victories that have been achieved to date. But this does take time and effort, and up and down the line, we have been working with small businesses, but also multinational corporations like Expedia or Airbnb to make sure that the lodging industry came on board with the executive orders. And there had been a rare circumstance where we've had to go to court. As you may have heard recently, there was a gym owner in Rutland County who refused to abide by the governor's order, and we had to go out and get a TRO, and we're still working with that gentleman to make sure that he is in compliance with the governor's orders.
What, can I break in there and just ask a question about the rapid response team?
Yes.
When you get a complaint, I walked into Price Chopper, an employee's not wearing a mask, which is, I understand it, required. Does somebody in the rapid response team check that out, or is that a state police function, or?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that may come to us. One, from a strict enforcement, there's a mechanism by which law enforcement puts those complaints into a database. They will investigate, and then they report them up to our office to see whether or not that requires legal action or maybe education to change the behavior at stake. And we will respond to that. And often we've been able to educate the business owner to modify their conduct to comport with the orders. But often we get proactive questions from the businesses to begin with before there is a complaint. You know, we want to, we are a warehouse operation and we want to be able to take a load off the trucks. Can we do that under the circumstances? And depending upon where we are in the temporal line of those addendums and the executive orders, maybe there's a creative solution, maybe there's not. And sometimes it's just they need to hear a no from the Attorney General's office for them to do what they need to do. And we've been fortunate for the most part. Vermonters have done the right thing.
Thank you.
And we've seen at least 170 of those inquiries come in about compliance. We've received over 15 allegations of non-compliance through law enforcement that we've dealt with as well. And in some cases, we've reached out proactively, as in the lodging industry and hospitality industry. We had to contact over 41 different establishments to ensure compliance. One of the areas we are somewhat disconcerting, or we find disconcerting, is the number of increased cyber tips to our ICAC unit, issues of child pornography, child sexual assaults. We've seen a greater than 200% increase between 2019 and 2020 in these tips. This is going to create a substantial need for additional resources for our ICAC unit. I believe we've previously testified, or the Attorney General has testified, about the need to increase staffing even before these data points. And this is one of the areas that currently we don't have the budget, or we're subject to the hiring freeze, where we can't hire the additional investigator, the support staff to fill this need. And we will do our best, but we will do our best.
There's also a House bill on this subject that we're scheduled to take up Friday. And I don't know if that's a vehicle for anything.
Thank you, Senator. I will note that to our team. Our Public Protection Division has been very active dealing with issues of price gouging. We've received over 110 complaints from the public. Each one of those has resulted in either an attorney, investigator, or support staff reaching out to find out what's the nature of the allegation, working with businesses to achieve compliance. And also in one case, we've had to bring forth a legal action to obtain a preliminary injunction to a Williston business that was selling masks at over 2,400% markup. And we were successful in receiving an injunction in that matter. Our civil rights unit is also seeing a significant increase in complaints related to employment inquiries that are COVID-19 related, whether they're allegations of employers not providing adequate protective measures or inquiries from employees about returning to work and the impact on their disabilities. We anticipate as we go forward, as in any economic downturn, we often see those numbers increase as people, when they're unable to find alternative employment, they are more apt to pursue their claims for discrimination. Our GCal division has also been all hands on deck. There have been a number of various contract and procurement issues. We have had to deal with issues of essential supplies, construction of temporary medical facilities, agreements for temporary housing, issues of force majeure, how they may apply to contracts. And we anticipate there will be litigation that arises out of this work, that there'll be non-conforming products, issues of force majeure that will result in litigation, and we will be called upon to defend the state in those circumstances. With regards to the judiciary backlog, this may most impact our Agency of Human Services division, who handles the TPR cases, the guardianship cases, the hospitalization cases. And with regards to our TPR cases in particular, already 50 cases have been backlogged. There have been another, I think 99 or close to 100 that have been filed and will need attention as the courts ramp up. And so, again, going back to earlier comments and to my foreshadowing, while we think we can meet the current demand for legal services under our current budget, if we are facing significant cuts and we cannot fill the openings that we have, that will have a significant impact on our ability to meet the legal needs of our citizens and our client agencies. So we raise that for your consideration and attention as we move forward together, understanding that many other agencies also have needs. We don't want to be sensitive to that.
Besides the $166,000 for pretrial services and diversion, do you have a specific number for the Attorney General's office in a request like we've seen from the other agencies?
We don't, Senator, because we've been able to meet the needs by repositioning assets that currently exist under our current budget.
Okay. Well, let us know if you do. We're always happy to not have a request. I would take the 166,000 as a request.
I think the way we'd like to put forth that is to educate folks here and at the appropriations committees of that shortfall. You all, if you can address it, that would be great.
Well, it appears to me to be and I'm not an expert, but Stephanie Barrett and others are, it appears to me to be a COVID-19 related expense, because the fee money didn't come in because we stopped doing things and they've lost 40% of their projected income.
But Dick, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, on the Ed Fund, we've been having discussions about lost revenue, via the sales tax and other thing. We've been told right along that lost revenue as a result of COVID isn't, something that we can backfill.
Okay.
At least under the current guidance.
You may be correct. I will look towards Stephanie Barrett as the expert.
That's our understanding. That's the hardest part, is that there's that explicit in the guidance, you can't replace revenue. And so, that one's sort of a direct fee, and so it's a revenue. So that one will be hard to defend at the moment. There was some discussion a little bit yesterday at the federal level, if there becomes bipartisan support for allowing it, it sounds like the administration, the Trump administration, would revise the guidance, but not until they have a clear signal from Congress that there's a clear bipartisan support to allow states to use that. And so I would say that sort of rests then at the U.S. Senate level, which I think is where the opposition is.
Be
towards
amazing
banning
if people actually in Washington actually work together.
What a surprise.
Oh, okay. Well, Josh, thank you very much. Very helpful. Any other questions for Josh? I think he already left. So with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break and then come back at about 10 minutes of 11.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
Peggy?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody.
All right. See you in a
Peggy, I don't know if you're there. This is Josh Diamond.
I am.
My apologies, I got bumped off.
Oh, no problem. We're taking a 10-minute break right now.
Will I be needed after the break?
I don't think so. I don't have you on the schedule.
Okay, I'm going to move on to another meeting, but if you need me to come back, I can excuse myself from the other meeting and answer any questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I can hear somebody eating, but I can't see them.
Oh my God, that's me. I'm so sorry.
I am too, but I'm muted.
I'm not muted, but I'm not eating.
I am eating, but I will now mute.
Joe, with regard to that piece on the traffic fines and the whether or not the people
Yep.
will have to pay that, If they move to the new data system, do you know anything
Right.
more about that?
I do not, Alice. I think you have to presume that they're going to be charged $5 and whatever for the filing.
So I propose we take out section 22 then.
I think that's a good idea.
So how do we do that? Just let John Bloomer know ahead of time?
I think if Joe just sends him a message.
Okay. Joe,
Well,
can you-
somebody has to bring an amendment. Alice, if you stand
Okay.
up and you just simply say you want to move to amend to strike that section, I can simply stand up then and respond and say, we've talked about it and we have no objection to doing that.
That'd be good.
okay. So I should just get something to John. Can he draw up an amendment, John?
I'm sure,
It's
I'm
not
sure he
much.
can, but all you're doing is striking that section, so I don't know how complicated that would be.
I
Right,
think
but
it'd be pretty
How
simple.
to do it?
If I'm back in time, I can do that too. If you need me to, but I may not be back until, I don't know how long the doctor's appointment's gonna last. It's supposed
Yeah.
to be 11:45,
I'll,
so,
I'll take care of it, Dick. I'll call John and ask him.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Who was the drafter on this bill anyway? Joe, do you,
Eric,
Eric?
Eric.
Yeah, I think it was Eric.
Okay, great.
All right, great. Why don't we start back up, Peggy? And I believe the first witness is Chris Fennell from the, Chris is on the phone and has provided a document from the center.
Oh, okay, start my video.
That's on our website. Are you there, Chris? Chris, you're muted. You're on phone, but you're muted. Hi, Chris. She may be away from the phone. Ken Schatz is with us. Maybe we could jump to the Department of Children and Families, Woodside, and then come back to Chris. Ken?
Morning. Good morning. This
Ken.
is, hope you can hear me.
We can.
Great. This is Ken Schatz. I'm the Commissioner of the Department for Children and Families. Christine Johnson, the Deputy Commissioner for Family Service Division, is also on the phone. I want to sort of, before I start, actually, I just want to check in with you, Senator Sears, in terms of what you are looking for me to talk about. The heading was regarding criminal juvenile justice funding for budget assistance and CARES Act.
Yep. And mainly anything in the Budget Adjustment Act. And I noted that there's a $66,000 request for Woodside and the Budget Adjustment Act. Is that correct? Or in the 3-month budget? I'm not sure.
So with respect to the supplemental BAA, there is not money in there for Woodside nor for, frankly, Family Service Division. The only two items in the DCF budget in the supplemental BAA are monies for child care stabilization and our emergency shelter response for homeless.
Well, that's not in our bailiwick, so.
Correct. So I
I guess-
yes, I get that. I just want to make sure you know that's what's there, and I'll move on.
Well, I got an email from Vince Aluzzi, myself, Jane, and Stephanie regarding an appropriation for Woodside, a special appropriation.
So it's a
That-
repurposing of one time.
Thank you, Stephanie. That is correct. It's of one-time money for fiscal year 20 that you put in the budget that we are using to enhance some of our clinical supports at the Woodside facility. And there needed to be some clarification of language on that. It's not a new money
Okay.
item. It was just clarifying the purpose.
Okay, that's fine. I guess I was confused by that, and that's helpful. And there is no, that's actually, while we're on Woodside, for those of you who are not aware, Woodside is back at Woodside.
That is accurate. We we have had, obviously, COVID-19 has had some significant impacts in a variety of ways. One of them is recognizing that most recently the temporary use of the Middlesex facility was not adequate to meet the needs of our youth or our staff. And so, as Senator Sears correctly indicated, we have moved back to the Woodside facility for the time being.
Okay. You know, Ken,
Sorry, I
I
can't
muted
hear.
myself.
Okay.
You couldn't because I'm muted. I'm in some ways sorry we asked you. I thought there was some appropriations in the juvenile justice field. As you look at a surge from the backlog of cases in unmanageable, etc.
So that's an interesting topic as we all move out in terms of restarting and reopening. As you, of course, know, the courts have been basically closed except for emergencies. So we know there is a backlog of cases, including chins and delinquency cases. Interestingly enough, and I appreciate this, as you may have seen, the judiciary did issue its memo regarding reopening, and they are prioritizing juvenile cases. So from our perspective, that's good news, because having those cases languish is not a good thing for families, children, or youth. So we're appreciative of that. As the court reopens, they will prioritize these juvenile cases. So that is very helpful. Interestingly enough, and Christine has talked about this in a variety of places, including in the media, not unlike other places around the country, we've actually seen a reduction in abuse and neglect calls to our child hotline. On the one hand, that is maybe good news that there's less abuse and neglect going on. On the other hand, we're not certain, because we know that as children are not in schools, are not generally speaking in childcare, there are less eyes on, and it simply may be we're not receiving the reports that we would normally have received. So again, as we reopen, we do anticipate somewhat of an uptick in those reports, but for the last couple of months, there's been a substantial reduction in those calls regarding abuse and neglect.
Okay. Any questions for Ken? Ken, thanks very much for joining us, and Christine, thank you too. Appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome. Bye now.
Next is Chris Fenno. Chris, good to have you back.
Well, we'll see. I'm having some technical difficulties, but hopefully.
Okay, well, we'll do our best. We do have your letter with your request for $1,153,698, rounded off to 1.16 million, we would say, I guess. So, but anyway, if you wanted to go through that with us, please.
Sure. And, you know, it is a kind of moving target. It's, it reminds, the budget stuff reminds me of when we started thinking about whether we needed to work from home or not, and what was going on in March. And, it felt like I made a plan every 24 hours. And that's how this budget piece has felt. The network, because we have a couple of things that we do. We do grants to folks, and then we also do our own, some programming. And in trying to identify what the costs might be, the network has sent me a long list of their increased costs. And I'm sure you have seen on the news, domestic violence programs, unfortunately, are receiving lots of calls. They've had to do alternate housing, emergency housing, so that they weren't co-locating people in the same emergency shelter, which then meant that they had additional costs for food and transportation, and the whole while their workers were working from home and having to go out from home. So it's been very stressful for them. they have increased costs, and so their request, the difference between the last time I submitted this and this time is that I looked at April through June costs, and then July 1st through December. So that's what the two breakdowns are. It's $197,091 for the first chunk through June 30th, and then an additional $444,182 through December. That also includes about $50,000 for the network itself, because they do programming, including legal services, out of their offices. And so they've had some additional increases because of that. The next piece of our grants are our human trafficking grants, and we have two, one in South Burlington and one in Rutland. And these programs have also seen increased costs in direct services to clients. We have a federal grant, our VOCA grant, that we do to support these two programs. And they have already maxed out all of their direct client services money. We've increased it by 10,000 already. And we see that probably they're going to need another 10,000 through June 30th, and then another 10,000 through December 31st. Again, just increased costs, increased hotels, those kind of costs. All of that work for the human trafficking is done through case managers. So we have two case managers who work on those grants, and they're the ones who are authorized to spend those monies on behalf of victims. And then finally, our advocate program, which is in the state's attorney's offices. And mostly why we're seeing that reduction, and I did hear that reduced funds this money can't be used because of decreased funding. But the truth is that starting July 1, we will have less money in our special funds to fund this program. In the past, we've been able to backfill it with federal VOCA money. That money has taken, we've lost almost 3 million in the last 3 years from that program. And so we are unable to actually find money to continue that.
I think what we're gonna have to do is have Stephanie figure out what of your requests are legitimate CARES Act funds and what are needs that need to be considered in the FY21 budget or the Budget Adjustment Act as truly, loss of funds or other things, but wouldn't be covered by CARES Act.
Okay.
And that's one that I have put a question mark on, is the advocate one. And it is a 21 question. It's not necessarily a BAA question right now.
So I think that would, and we've been talking about this problem pretty regularly over the years.
Yeah.
The Victims Advocate Program. Part of the problem, obviously, is that the Victim Advocate Program, while is funded through the Center for Crime Victim Services, they work in the state attorney's office. So they expect to receive increases like other state employees, and the VOCA Act doesn't provide those increases.
Right. Yes. So that would
I'm not sure that would be CARES Act funding, unfortunately.
Yeah, it might not be. And the same, I don't know. It was interesting to hear your discussion about the 8% cut. We have only 3 programs or types of programs that we give state money to. We don't have any state general fund that goes to anything else. It's pure pass through, but it does support the very network programs that I was talking about before.
Yep.
For domestic violence
Right.
and sexual assault programs. It also supports the supervised visitation programs and the child advocacy centers. And we have a meeting set for next week internally where we're going to say, okay, how much money? It's a little over $100,000. I don't know that we're looking at across the board cuts, but I don't know what we're looking at yet. I think we're going to look at usage, other services that are available in regional areas. I don't know. But I am with all of you who said across the board cuts really don't work, because all it does is make people do the same with less money and further stresses the safety net.
Right. Unless we're willing to say we don't want these programs anymore.
Right. And I hope we're not saying that.
No, I'm let me make clear to those listening on YouTube. I'm not advocating for eliminating programs. I'm saying that if you're really going to make tough decisions, then you say, we're just not going to fund elevator inspectors anymore.
Yep. Yes. And
That- I mean,
I wish that
not
we
to pick on elevator inspectors. I think there's two.
And, you know, I wish that we weren't seeing such a decrease in all of our special funds,
Right.
so that we don't even know what
Right.
ultimately that's going to mean. But
This is purely a very difficult time. So your total needs are 1.1 million, but we need to figure out what of that could be attributed to CARES Act funding and what wouldn't be.
And even under what the center's costs are, I wasn't sure whether you could pick up our unemployment costs. We furloughed
I'm
14
curious as
people
why there's unemployment costs to the center.
because we are a pay-as-you-go.
Oh,
So it's when somebody makes a claim, we get billed directly on a quarterly basis
okay,
from the Department of Labor. So it is an actual increased cost for us.
okay. Stephanie?
No, it's, I think that the unemployment costs will be eligible. That's, it was clear in the guidance that the state can't do that. They couldn't furlough people and then charge the unemployment overhead to the CRF. But I think for the crime victim services, it will be allowed. And right now, and we can put CRF money directly into the unemployment fund on behalf of employers. So that one I'm not terribly worried about.
Okay.
That would be great. And then the only other thing that is missing is we have ongoing discussions about the needs should we have to, on a prolonged basis, or have to go out again and shut our doors. Because we have, especially the victims compensation program, who are unable to work from home. And we don't even know if that technology would be possible. That is a conversation we've had since I've been here with the IT folks with the state, because we're behind the firewall, but we are not supported by the state's IT program. So we have our own computer network and servers and all of that. So part of it would be if we could tie into the state system to ensure security. So that's just an ongoing discussion. It's not included here, but it is something we're talking about.
Thank you. Questions for Chris? Chris, you've been with us before to talk about these budget issues, and I think it's really a matter of figuring out what would be acceptable under the CARES Act and what would not be, and how we deal with these problems. I'm not looking forward to our work on the 3-month budget or the 9-month budget, whenever that comes, if we don't get significant help from Congress. And I would guess I share that concern with every other member of the Senate.
We're in the midst also of, because of how the budget's going to be done this year, historically, the first quarter's bills from our grantees, we allow them to draw down half of their money, and we're not going to be able to. So they're only going to be able to draw down that 23%.
Yep.
And we need to get that word out to them, because especially the network programs are going to have some issues potentially.
Oh boy. Well, more good news.
I'm glad
Thanks
I don't
so
have your
much.
job.
Well, kind of glad I don't have yours either. So we're all in that boat. We're all in this together, except when Congress doesn't fund They
Great.
can print money. We can't. Senator White can print money.
So I just wanted to re-emphasize the we're all in this together theme that's come out of this. We are really not all in this together. As was pointed out to me, we are all in the same storm, but there are many who have life jackets and many that don't.
Mhm.
Good way to put it.
I really like that.
That's the start of Senator Bruce's next novel.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the opportunity to give some testimony today.
Thanks, Chris.
You
Glad
could
to-
do worse than having Jeanette as a main character.
There is a
No,
novelist.
you don't.
There is a novelist from her hometown, you know, that
Mhm.
in Putney there. I think Archer Mayer is from that area.
Yes.
Who I think he's already used Senator White in some of his books as his character.
He kills me off right away if he does.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Jim Baker and Matt DeGastino from Department of Corrections to discuss the corrections request of 2.9 million, I believe, in CRF money. And Jim, are you there? And Matt?
I'm here, Senator. Good morning.
Can't see either you or Matt. We can
Really?
hear you.
Commissioner, it's well
Yes.
past May 1st.
Thanks for reminding me of that, Senator. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Senator, I don't know, as long as you can hear me, it looks like I have
That's fine.
my video
We can hear
on,
you
but I don't know what the problem is.
That's all right.
So not that I want to bring you any other problems, right? As far as money
Right.
goes. I don't have much more, I don't have any good news to add to the conversation that Chris was just talking about. And so I thought what I would do is Matt can talk about the lines and the dollars when it comes to the 2.97 in the care
Jim, just so
fund.
you know, I have a doctor's appointment at 11:45. So
All right,
if
I'll
I
move it.
step out in the middle of your testimony, Senator Nick is going to take over at 11:30.
No problem. I'll try to move it along so I.
Oh, no, that's
don't-
not that's not the problem. I didn't want you to think I had left you.
Yeah, I thought based on what I believe you were all asking for is I would touch on the CARES request that went in front of joint fiscal. Matt can talk more about the actual dollars. And then I thought I would kind of take you into where we're starting to get our heads wrapped around the skinny budget, the 23% number,
Yep.
which is an 8% cut, and then starting to move towards the August conversation about the rest of fiscal year 21 and where we're starting to move our heads to inside corrections. I don't have anything definitive, but just to give you some sense of where we're going. And
Can you,
what,
one thing about the CARES budget, and maybe
Yep.
Matt can answer it before you get into that. In the enhanced pay for facility and nursing staff, how long is that anticipated to go? Is that end when the governor's order is lifted, or now to June 15th? And is that budgeted for the whole period?
let me tell you, I'll let you know what the concept is, and then I'll let Matt talk about the dollars. The concept was that the union had negotiated this piece with the administration, about 20% in a hazarded area and $1.50 more for working COVID related. And we had designated Northwest and St. Johnsbury, Northeast, as COVID affected areas because of the outbreak and because of the transfer of the inmates to St. Johnsbury. So the folks that were working in those areas were entitled to the 20% enhancement. We felt like since we got a request from our contractor that since we moved nursing and other medical staff around to support the surge, that we would support it. My feelings are, and I guess ultimately my decision would be, as soon as we end that 20% for our staff, we're going to end it for the nursing medical staff, Senator.
Okay.
But Matt can talk about the dollars.
When does it end, though? That's my question.
Well, I think the agreement doesn't go just because the governor extended June 15th. I expect the union will have a conversation with the administration, but I think it ends next weekend, Matt, right?
My understanding, that's correct, yes. Good morning, everyone. The enhanced pay right now, as I understand, would end on May 23rd. It was extended from May 9th to May 23rd. Not sure if it's going to be extended beyond that. But our request, DOC's request, is through any obligation we would have to June 30th. So it assumes the potential for that enhanced pay going through end of fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's helpful. So the rest of that money, Senator, in the CARES fund is pretty much, Matt can give you the dollars. It's just based on what we spent during the COVID-19 challenge, right? I mean, we spent big dollars on hotel rooms and trying to keep our staff out of general flow of population because, we recognized that was the entry point into the system.
I broke your train of thought and you were headed in a different direction regarding how you see coming out of the surge. And so I'm sorry for that.
No, that's fine. Because I did expect you would want to hear about our request in the CARES money. We do not have any request in for the second budget adjustment. What we're really starting to work on now is the skinny budget and then the August discussion about the remainder of the budget. And recognizing that, there is a number floating around out there that's got to get firmed up with the administration, but it's a big hit. And, it's a big hit for us as we come out of the fog around COVID-19 and continue to try to keep our facilities clear. We're just now starting to get into the conversation about how we can manage that. And I think you all know this, that, 96% of our funding is general fund dollars. It makes it even more challenging because of the revenue predictions around general fund money. Even more challenging is, for the last 5 years, the budget has been pretty much level funded with some enhancements, but not big enhancements. Been able to manage through that over the years and deliver a budget at the end of the year that kept us in the black. But that's not going to be the conversation moving forward. No matter what the number ends up being, we've got to rethink some of the things that we do. And where our minds are going to in the conversations are, there's only certain places inside the agency, the department, where there's big chunks of money. And you all know where they are. I mean, some of it lies in Mississippi for our out-of-state population, and some of it lies in some of our programming. And yes, it does lie in staff. But even when you start talking about staff layoffs to meet numbers, it becomes more difficult because you end up with bumping rights. And then you end up with people, if you do get to the point where you lay people off, there's buyout checks and accumulative leave and et cetera, that really reduces your opportunity to get big chunks of money. So one of the areas we're focused on, and Senator, I touched on this a little bit moving forward, is if you're gonna create those opportunities to save money by looking at the out-of-state population, you've got to create space here to do that. And in order to create space, it means moving more people along to community-based supervision. And as we move those along, and we've gotten a little view of that during COVID, because we have moved quite a few people out. And the more folks that we moved out, the more challenging they were, because we all have agreed that the population is complicated. As we move them out, we've gotten a little peak at behavior as a result of that. And, not that we've had some real challenges or messes, but we have had some situations where we're seeing some domestics, we're seeing some behavior that on normal circumstances, we would have had more people out there to supervise, but we had to move people into the facilities. And so as we move people out, I think we have to have a much more robust wraparound service in how we're going to deal with those. And we don't have the numbers yet. I don't have numbers yet. And we're working on that. But I did mention to you the concept that we talked about around hubs and spokes and a version of Project Vision. And, that is what we're starting to talk about as it's focused on domestic violence. Because when we look at the folks in our system that are the riskiest and they have the tendency towards violence, you come back to that domestic violence population of abusers. And so we have engaged the conversation with CSG. Ellen and David and I have been talking a couple times about this concept. I've engaged the conversation with David Kennedy from John Jay College, who was part of the strategy that we used in Rutland. A big part of that strategy was in fact domestic violence and how we dealt with serial abusers who were high risk. And we're starting to put that together. And it's going to, that focus will be on evidence-based informed practices, partnered with such partners as CSG and John Jay. And there's going to come along with that some type of investment that we're going to have to make in that. And, I'm going to have to, informal conversations with House Appropriations with Representative Hooper yesterday. We're going to put together some numbers for her, what that would look like for us to support it. But we're going to have to make that investment within the frameworks of where we are with what we're going to be required to cut as we move forward. If, in fact, some of this doesn't fall under the CARES money that may or may not come from the feds. And so that's where our mind is going, and our needs are going to be focused in that area. But at the same time, living up to what our obligations are around public safety and our dual mission of trying to take folks who've been challenged in life that end up in jail and taking them from inmate to good citizen. And it's going to take a lot of work to reprogram that thinking, but it's also going to be dependent upon how much we can depend on services in the field that will wrap around and support us. Mental health treatment, drug treatment, the criminal justice centers, COSA programs. I mean, the list can go on, and I can go on and on about it, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of where our head is.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. I think my biggest concern is that you end up with a surge of court cases coming after once some of the judiciary gets back into place, and you end up with increased numbers in our correctional facilities and aren't able to move sufficient people out of Mississippi to cut the budget that way. Then you're looking at, I want to make sure that we still invest around $2 million in community-based programs in anticipation of the justice reinvestment reductions. So I'm really concerned that we keep the investments going in that and not lose that in an 8% cut. So I'm glad that Representative Hooper is taking that lead. I would like to join her on behalf of the Senate Appropriations Committee and let me know what you come up with.
Yeah, Senator, I can't agree with you more. I mean, there's a big concern here, and that's why I kind of touched on as we put more people out into the community. I mean, these folks know it. We did not have the level of supervision out that we normally had, because as we got into sick leave and COVID leave, we had to move a lot of staff from the field into facilities in order to keep the facilities going and also maintain the level of cleanliness that we had going. And so it will be interesting, not only from the court system, but also as we start to move some of the CCOs out of facilities and start focusing on some of the behavior that we may have let go, that we need to recheck. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like in the process.
But I also am concerned about an increase in detention numbers.
Absolutely.
We're down. How many on detention now? About 300?
Yeah. And I will tell you, within the last week and a half, our population today is at 1776. That number has snuck up a little bit over the last week and a half. you know.
Okay.
So,
And I'm concerned that the detention numbers will also rise when the courts come back, and you don't have as much control over that as you do over the sentence population.
Correct.
So, thank you, Commissioner. I've got to leave, but Senator Nick is going to take over.
Yep.
Thank you
Senator.
all very much. We'll see you at 1, committee members. Thanks, committee.
So Senator, I'm open to any questions from the committee.
Okay, does people have some questions? Jeanette, Senator White?
I was just curious, Commissioner, and I may have missed it, but why the numbers have crept up again? Because I thought we were at something like 1,300 and now we're at 1,700.
Yeah, I think
Is that
the low
right?
we went, no, I think the low we went down to, Senator, was around 1347, somewhere in that ballpark.
Mhm.
So today we're at 1377. So for
Oh,
the sake-
1377. I thought you said
Right.
1777.
No, God, no.
Okay,
1377.
great.
But
Thank
it
you.
is a little concerning, going back to Senator Sears's point. I do think in that 40, some of it is detained population. And some of it is, we've had a couple folks we supervise get into situations of new crimes, particularly domestics. And so that's part of what I think that 40 is. I don't have the hard numbers. I'm doing it from looking at the reports I get every day.
Well, that makes me feel better because I was thinking 400.
No. 400, we went north of what we were able to diminish the population
Right.
by. which
Okay,
was
thank you.
305.
Good. Does anyone else have any questions? And also any for Matt? Okay, I guess we're all set then. Except
Thank
for
you, senators. I'm sure we're going to be talking more.
See you what later today? Is that what you said? Are we
I
seeing
said, I
you
think-
later today, Matt?
No, Matt,
I don't believe so.
Okay, good, okay.
I'm sure
Okay.
we'll be talking more, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Okay.
Thank you.
next-
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Next on the agenda, which would be Stephanie, are you weighing in on this, or did you already consider what you said totally? Or do you want to do some more?
I didn't have anything to weigh in on. I do have a summary sheet, if the committee would like it, that I've been putting together. And I'm sure we'll use it this afternoon in Senate Appropriations because the same discussion about what to include in the
Right,
BAA is up there.
yes.
So you let me know if you want me to send it along to you, or if it's
Sure.
just another sheet of numbers.
Good
Um,
idea, since this is coming up regularly.
Okay, so I will forward this right now to Peggy, and she can forward it to the whole group,
Very good. And then,
or
Can
throw
you
it up on
post-
the sheet.
Should
Throw
I
it up on the
post it as
screen
well,
for a moment.
Stephanie? Sorry.
I'm
should I-
sorry?
Should I post it as well?
You can, yes.
Okay.
okay, that would be great. Is that it, Stephanie? I see Jeanette.
That's all I would have. I didn't finish color coding something, but that's okay. We can put it up and just as soon
Okay.
as Peggy has it.
Very good. And then Jeanette, go ahead. Senator White, I'm sorry.
I just have a question for Stephanie. So I was unaware of this, the center's pay-as-you-go unemployment. Are there other
There are.
entities? Are they gonna automatically be made whole by the COVID money, or do they have to individually request that? And
So I
how
think
do
they
we
would-
find out who they are?
So Damien's probably testified on this in several different committees, but the state is probably the biggest one. So if we furloughed people, we're self-insured on the unemployment side, then we would get a bill from the unemployment trust fund for the folks that we furloughed or laid off, et cetera. And that happens regularly. Like Vermont State colleges, if they furloughed or laid off, they would get the bill related to those folks that were drawing unemployment. I think UVM is in that same boat, the designated agencies. So it's a variety of those types of, and that's why the center is one of them. And so they would, if there's normal churn of employment. And so obviously if somebody does get laid off or furloughed or has, you know, a valid unemployment claim, we make those entities make those payments. In the case of the center, they made that decision to furlough people, and they know that they are going to have an unemployment bill because of it. And right now, any entities that are in that direct payment category for unemployment would have to come and ask. The guidance is very clear that the state can't use the CRF money. Like we couldn't have decided to either voluntarily furlough or lay off and furlough people to take advantage of the $600 of extra UI at the federal level and then have the CRF pay for the state unemployment piece. That guidance is clear, but for the quasi organizations that aren't, like the centers aren't state employees. They belong to that entity. And so it's a little less clear. I don't know that there's been actual COVID related layoffs at Vermont State College or UVM. They are asking for coverage of leave time because of COVID. Private commercial entities have that covered under the federal, the two pieces of the federal work bills, COVID bills, but the public, like the schools were, those schools were explicitly excluded for having leave time covered. And so those are the types of things that they are coming forward and asking for, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is just a quick summary of what you've heard today. And I don't know, Peggy, if you can just hit the little plus button once or twice, make it a little easier to see. So the judiciary piece you've already heard about, that $4.9 million is in the House passed budget. That's why I don't have it highlighted in green. And I've just added the request from the Defender General, request from the state's attorney, the request from crime victims, which I don't have any questions about their FY20 amounts. I do have a few little questions on their, obviously the advocate piece, and then the health insurance piece and the fundraising replacement piece that they have in their FY21 amount. And up in the state's attorney, it's a question mark, a little bit around the case management system replacement in the state's attorney, that those will be worked through either in the quarter bill or even more in the big bill. But those are the areas where I have questions. And then DOC is, they're still working on their estimates, as we've just heard, and hopefully if there's a need for FY20 amounts for the ideas that are aligned and consistent with that change in community supervision, that those estimates could come in pretty quickly. But what that would mean, if you scroll down just a little bit, I don't know if it can go any further down, unless what it would mean is about just under 1.5 would be added by the Senate Appropriations Committee if they agree to the budget adjustment for the items that are highlighted, pending the DOC number right now. So
Okay.
that was just a quick summary of the money, which is what I'm in the habit of doing.
That's very helpful. So any additional questions for Stephanie? It's good to have it that way.
Okay.
I can't see anybody except Stephanie, myself, and Jeanette. So does anybody else have any questions? No, I guess
Do you
not.
want me to take this off the screen so you can see everybody?
Well, is everybody done looking at it?
Well, it's also posted, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I've
All right.
seen it, Alice. No questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have, I think that's the end for today. I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention? We're finished then for today. Until tomorrow at 9:30, when we're going to discuss the e-filing fees.
No, that's
I
Friday.
thought it was Friday.
It's Friday.
Sorry, it's underneath my screen here. Oh, that's Friday. So we don't have a meeting of judiciary tomorrow. Jeanette?
Alice,
Yes.
I may not, Bill is having cataract surgery tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
And he's supposed to then go back over to the hospital on Friday morning to
Okay.
have it checked.
Yeah.
And depending on how he feels about driving, I may not be here on Friday.
Okay,
I can let Senator Sears know.
okay. See,
Alice, I arrived at this late this morning. Did you guys talk about John Rogers' amendment?
No.
we did not. Would you like to talk about that right now?
Mhm.
I don't see why not, but I don't know what Dick's thought process is here. It's an amendment to a bill that I'm the reporter on, and we
Right.
haven't talked about it. So I don't know whether he was intending to just dismiss it outright or whether he wanted us to talk about it.
Can I suggest if Dick isn't here, he really seemed to have the strongest objection to it. So I'd be reluctant to do anything. So maybe we should defer a discussion. If John brings it on the floor, Dick had said he was going to pull us off into a side room.
Okay, so,
I don't know what we can do without him here.
right. I believe John is going to put it on the floor today.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Is there any way of putting this off, the whole bill off another day until we can, and maybe until Friday, so that we can have a discussion? Because I really would like to have a discussion about it and about whether, Joe and I had some conversation this morning, and I think it isn't a slam dunk necessarily, and I think it probably needs more testimony on the bill and the idea, but I'd like to be able to do that before I either am put in a position of either voting for or against the amendment.
Okay, so Joe, if would you be comfortable postponing the bill until the next day?
Yeah,
Or
well,
Friday
it would be
even.
Friday to the date
Legis-
certain. I don't have any problem doing that, Alice. I just wanted to make sure as the reporter, I didn't get caught flat-footed on the floor trying to figure out what you guys had decided, because I wasn't here for the first part of the meeting. So if we can all agree on at least postponing it until Friday, whatever objections Dick wants to raise with us, we'll have time to do that because we're in Judiciary prior to being on the floor on
Right,
Friday.
Mhm.
we're in judiciary at 9:30.
Yeah.
So I guess if, the thing of it is, we could discuss this with Dick this afternoon, provided he's back, but he may not be back in time for the start of floor action.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think putting it off makes sense by a day, and that's easy enough. You can just, Joe can just ask Tim to do that. And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think you need to do it for 2 days because Judiciary isn't meeting tomorrow. So it needs to be put off till Friday.
Right.
Date certain, okay.
yes.
Can
But I
someone
think
let
I have
Senator-
to ask that from the floor, don't I?
Well, Joe, I think the easiest thing is just to tell Tim you don't want to deal with it till Friday. And then
Yeah.
he'll just not move to it. Because if you go to a date certain, you have to have a vote and it allows,
Oh, yeah.
I also want to make sure that Dick knows we're doing that. I'll shoot Dick an email and let him know directly. So
Okay, that's.
Maybe call him up because he won't, does he
Listen,
check his email on his phone?
I don't know. Yeah.
I have no idea.
He's on email a lot. I think if you email him, he should respond pretty quickly.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
get him an email.
The other thing would be to let Secretary Bloomer know. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let everybody know. What the hell?
Okay, that would be good.
Will you need an attorney on this bill on Friday that I should give the heads up to, or no?
You mean to be on the floor?
No, to be in if you're going to discuss it. Do you want any attorney? there?
Rogers amendment.
Might not be a bad idea.
not sure who drafted it.
Okay, it's 234 or it's,
John Rogers' amendment to 234.
okay.
Whoever it was advised him that it was germane,
Yes,
And
that's
then-
correct.
then got a counter ruling. So,
Frankly, I was surprised by that counter ruling, but
I was too.
well, I I have seen it go both ways. And it's always interesting to think what it would have been if it was a different person proposing, different situation.
Right.
But
Oh, well.
Well, we often add things to miscellaneous bills. In fact, I think we just did it about 10 minutes before that one.
Well, we added the entire immigration,
Yeah,
child's immigration.
but
bill.
no one questioned that.
And
Right.
we had already,
Without a-
we had already passed that out of our committee and it was sitting on the floor.
Yeah,
but still the germaneness issue was,
yeah, without objection, it went
No
through.
one
Right.
raised it. Yeah, no
you
one
have to
raised.
object.
Anybody know what bills we're discussing on the floor today?
I don't.
S99, I was told last night.
Is that the alimony?
Oh, God.
And that passed 5-0, right? Once it finally,
Oh,
Alice says, oh my God.
no, it
I
didn't.
know.
5-0.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it was 5-0.
5-0.
It was?
Yeah,
Yeah, the final version was acceptable, I think, around the table. I know I voted for it.
yeah, I think everybody voted for it. I'll look at the record and see.
Okay. And what else is on the floor? Does anybody else know?
That I don't remember. Let's see if he said,
I think there's a bill from the House, H.
234, that's Joe's. 245, that was Ann Cummings. Oh, the genetic, oh no,
Do you guys
Which
want me
was
to end the
Ann.
live stream? Do you want me to end the live stream or you want me to keep going? We're still on live.
End it.
And end it.
Could
Okay.
go off of that.